Joe, a 32-year-old guy who had always played by the rules, was having a bit of an existential crisis. He'd spent years climbing the corporate ladder, stressing about deadlines and pretending to care about office politics. But lately, something just didn't sit right with him. The more he thought about it, the more it all seemed pointless. One evening, after another mind-numbing day at work, Joe found himself Googling things like, "What's the meaning of life?" and "Why does my job suck so much?" That's when he stumbled upon the philosophy of absurdism. The idea that life had no inherent meaning hit him like a ton of bricks. And instead of feeling depressed, Joe felt liberated. If nothing mattered, why was he wasting his time worrying about everything? The next morning, Joe woke up with a newfound sense of freedom. He threw on the first clothes he found, an old band t-shirt and mismatched socks, and headed to the office. When his boss started droning on about some urgent project, Joe just smiled and nodded, not really listening. "Sure, I'll get right on that," he said, but in his mind, he was already planning his escape. At lunch, instead of sitting at his desk like he usually did, Joe decided to shake things up. He wandered into a nearby park and plopped down on a bench, right next to a squirrel. "Hey, buddy," he said to the squirrel, tossing it a peanut from his pocket. "Did you know nothing really matters?" The squirrel didn't respond, because it was a squirrel. But Joe felt a strange sense of camaraderie with the little guy. They were both just existing, no grand purpose needed. That afternoon, Joe decided to test his new philosophy. He had a stack of reports to finish, but instead of stressing, he crumpled one up and shot it into the trash can like a basketball. "Kobe!" he shouted, feeling a rush of adrenaline. Why had he been so uptight before? This was way more fun. As the day went on, Joe's behavior became increasingly absurd. He answered phone calls in a pirate accent, sent emails written entirely in emojis, and at one point, started a paper airplane competition with his co-workers. They all thought he'd lost his mind, but Joe didn't care. For the first time in years, he was actually enjoying himself. After work, Joe decided to really embrace the absurd. He went to a grocery store and bought the most random assortment of items he could find: a pineapple, a rubber duck, and a single sock. Then he went home and threw a one-man party, complete with a dance-off against his vacuum cleaner. He was laughing so hard by the end of it that he could barely breathe. But the best part of Joe's day came when he checked his phone before bed. There was a message from an old friend he hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, man, it's been a while. How've you been?" Joe stared at the message for a moment, then replied, "You wouldn't believe the day I've had. But honestly, it was the best day ever." As Joe lay in bed that night, he realized something important. Sure, life might not have any inherent meaning, but that didn't mean it couldn't be fun. By letting go of his need for everything to make sense, Joe had found a strange kind of freedom. And who knew? Maybe tomorrow he'd see what else didn't matter. The end. So if Joe's wild ride through the world of absurdism made you chuckle or gave you something to think about, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's keep finding the fun in life's absurdities together.